Hello, class. Ethan Hennis here. I hope y'all are doing okay, staying safe and in quarantine. Staying inside. Rough times out there. It's weird doing this on a laptop. I think I miss you guys, miss the class. Um, just kind of. I never thought I'd be doing this presentation on a laptop in my girlfriend's garage, but here I am. Life goes on. So. Presentation time. My overall topic was sports community and youth, and the topic I chose to do was developing young athletes through coaching. And so this was a pretty easy topic for me to choose, I think, because it's something I'm really passionate about. Um, I have a decent amount of coaching experience with youth. I've done it through like camps and just random teams. It's just something I care a lot about, and it was really fun to do research on it and kind of see like where the problems were with coaching nowadays. And so just go ahead and get into it. So a little brief overview. I'm gonna start out with an introduction and kind of define the topic and what we're talking about. I'm gonna go into some of the major problems in coaching, and that's kind of the bulk of my presentation. I'm gonna address what's going wrong with it, and the next thing I'll talk about is I will actually watch a couple videos that relate to the topic, and then talk about maybe some possible solutions that we can come up with to cover these problems. And then we're going to address the quiz and the case study, and then I'll wrap it up with a conclusion. So youth sports, what is youth sports? It's defined as the social institution designed to help improve the health and wellness of the athletes and provide an opportunity for positive youth development. So next, a lot of my presentation consists of the major problems in coaching. The first one is lack of training. We're going to talk about what the coaches aren't getting, or a lot of them aren't. We're going to talk about the qualities of a good coach, and I'm also going to combat that with the qualities of a bad coach. And then we're going to go into impact on emotional development. What kind of impact do these coaches have on these kids emotionally? And then we're going to talk about changing the culture in youth sports. So the first problem with coaching, lack of training. Per the National Alliance for Youth Sports, studies show that only 5 to 10% of youth sport coaches have received any relevant training. So this statistic has a lot to do with coaches signing up simply because they have a child related to them or a child that they know on the team. So, they're just signing up for it for that reason. And that's not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing by any means, but, that's where this statistic comes from. I think a lot of it does. And this is a staggering statistic for a person that has so much impact on their athletes. And that's something to remember. But put yourself in the shoes of a parent. Would you want your kids having someone who is such an influential person in your children's life have no training at all, basically? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. So next, a 2004 report from the University of Maine found that youth athletes who play for an untrained coach drop at a rate of 26% per year, while those who play for a qualified coach drop out at 5% per year. This simply tells us that kids are literally quitting the sport they are playing altogether simply because the coach is not qualified. And the NAYS states, which is the National Alliance for Youth Sports, I'll kind of talk about them a little bit later. They state that kids and preteens are more likely to experience a boost in self-esteem when playing for a qualified coach as opposed to an unqualified coach. Qualified coaches, they know how to make practices fun, safe, and also age appropriate. So having a qualified coach also decreases the chance of team hopping, which is like when a kid goes from one team to another each year, basically, and they get a new coach, new teammates. This is good in some cases, but a lot of the things that they're missing has to do with like the bond that a player and a coach create over, a certain amount of years. Like you can't build a good bond with a coach if you're just getting a new one every single year. That's something that has to be built every year after that. And what exactly deems a coach to be qualified? And so that started to make me think, like what kind of training is offered? Like they're talking about so much of a problem in training, like there's so little of it. What exactly is there out there to use? So I found this. So the NAYS, the National Alliance for Youth Sports. And what this is it's an organization, but they offer like a training program for coaches, and you can become NAYS certified. So to become an NAYS coach, you must watch the coaching youth sports training video, pass the review questions covering the material presented during the video, complete an exam at the end of the video, and agree to abide by the NAYS Code of Ethics for Coaches. Once those steps have been completed, you move on to viewing the sport-specific video for the sport you are coaching to complete your membership. So like if you're coaching football or baseball, that's the training you're going to focus on. I found that this training is actually pretty affordable and efficient, but most importantly, it extends beyond the fundamental skills and drills of a given sport. And as far as like fees and stuff, this training to become a coach, it costs $20 per coach. And that's whether you do it like online training, or sometimes they have NAYS guys come to a meeting like with your league, like with all the coaches, and they'll do everyone right there for $20. And this membership that you get, it's valid for 1 year. And to continue the membership, you just have to re-sign the Code of Ethics and pay another $20. So it's basically $20 a year for each coach. So not terrible, but I have a video that kind of talks about what they have to offer, so you can kind of get an idea of that.
Coaching youth sports is a privilege, and with it comes huge responsibilities for providing safe, positive, and rewarding experiences for every child on the team. For more than 35 years, coaches and youth sports organizations work directly with the National Alliance for Youth Sports for its top-quality training and membership program for youth sports coaches. Become a base member. Coaches participate in two-part interactive training. The first part is all about coaching youth sports. Top collegiate and professional coaches like Mike Smith, Joe Hall, Daniel Stringer, and many other respected leaders share their insights on the best ways to motivate young athletes in sportsmanship, communicate with players, build confidence, and more. Plus, there's a lot of important information shared by sports psychologists and experts on injury prevention, nutrition, hydration, and other key areas. The second part of the clinic is all about the sport that you're coaching. These coaches receive a strong foundation in the fundamentals of their sport, along with drills, practice organizations, and support to help their players develop individual skills. Not only this, the sports are available for training at the or at an on-site training hosted by the local base member organization. Coaches can complete the training with membership by mentor, insurance, access to additional free online training courses, and coaching resources, along with a variety of fun coaching topics. These membership coaches can benefit from traumatized but also eligible for enhanced select membership to enhance their coaching skills. All these coaches agree to provide the Code of Ethics coach. The training and membership costs just $20. More than 3.5 million coaches have been trained by the National Alliance for Youth Sports, and over 1,000 organizations offer this program for their coaches. Coaches, join today online. Youth organizations, it's free and easy to become a base member organization. For more information, visit base.com at 1-800-688-HENNIS.
So as you can see, it's really not a bad option. They have a lot to offer, and for as cheap and affordable as it is, like it's not a bad way to go. So the next one I found is another training program that's called Positive Coaching Alliance. This is PCA for short, actually. And what they have to offer is 6 online courses. And all of these are expert developed, and they're designed to help coaches, parents, athletes, and actually officials to ensure that winning happens both and on and off the field in youth sports. And this training program costs $30, so it's $10 more than the other one. So I have a video for them too as well, so you can kind of compare the two. So, also a really good option as well, this one. Um, the biggest thing I think that stands out is like how good both of these options are and like how many youth organizations and leagues aren't taking advantage of things like this. And so this kind of just goes back to the statistic I mentioned earlier, the 5 to 10% of coaches that have little to no training. That's just shocking to me because of how good these options are, and you should be able to take advantage of these and have these for your coaches. So the next problem in coaching is simply the qualities. So what are the qualities of a good coach? According to research by the Aspen Institute's Project Play initiative, kids want coaches who first respect and encourage them. Kids want to be respected just as much as you as a coach want to be respected, believe it or not. And this is important because if you create a bond where you respect both of each other enough, like that's going to go a long way. And also encouraging them, like especially when kids are at that point where they just need some encouragement, like that also goes a long way. And it's just going to help so much long term. Next exists as a positive role model. When you sign up to be a coach, you take this role. And some coaches they're put in the hot seat of this role, and they don't use it for a positive. They don't make a positive environment out of it. And kids watch coaches, man. They do it all the time, and they will copy you. They will look up to you, and they will do as you say. And so if you're not setting them up for success, they're going to notice that, and it's not going to benefit you. Next one, offer clear, consistent communication. This is a big one because as far as communication goes, you have to communicate to kids differently because, especially when it comes to age, you can't communicate to a 14-year-old soccer player the same way you're going to communicate to a 6-year-old soccer player. And the reason that is, for example, like sarcasm. I use a lot of sarcasm just because that's how like my personality is. So like I can't use sarcasm the same way I do with a 14-year-old as I do with a 6-year-old. If you use like 6-year-olds haven't developed, all those communication skills, so they're going to take a lot of things literally. And if you use sarcasm with them, it's just not going to go well. The next one, have a knowledge of the sport. This one's pretty obvious just because, like, to be a coach, you should know what you're doing and you should know the sport, understand it better than the people that you're coaching. And that also goes to like to use for levels. So like if you're at a higher level, your knowledge needs to be higher, and the lower you go, the higher you go, it doesn't matter. Like you need to be able to match the knowledge for that competitive level. And the last one, have a willingness to listen. Um, you as a coach, you assume that the kids are going to listen to you, but you also need to be listening to them because that goes back to respect as well. Like that goes both ways. So next up, so we talked about good qualities of a bad coach. First one is singles out children to publicly criticize or humiliate. Adults can handle that in a lot of cases, but children who are playing a youth sport, this is just not a good idea because if you're singling out children, you're going to embarrass them in front of other teammates, in front of their parents, just people who they care about a lot. It's just not going to be good for them. Uh, Place winning above everything, including following sports rules or guidelines. I think this one is right on the mark because like we have so many coaches these days that just winning is the top priority and that's all that matters. If you win, you're successful, and that's just that's unfortunately the mindset that our culture has, and I'll kind of talk about that later in the presentation. But that's just how it is sometimes, and it probably shouldn't be. Ignore safety and health issues of the child or team. Some of the training that I mentioned, like in some of those videos, some of the training sessions have to do with safety and health, like CPR and stuff like that. So that would be pretty good to add on, but like a lot of coaches just have no idea as far as like keeping safety and health a priority with their athletes, and that's not safe for anyone. Allows kids to badmouth or bully each other. As a coach, you have control over all of this. So if you're letting this go on, you're creating an environment for your athletes that's not going to be good, and it's going to turn into kind of like a hierarchy, kids bullying each other, and that kind of goes into the next one, playing favorites. That's also creating a hierarchy on the team. Seeing as one kid is better than the other, it should never be like that. It should be everyone's on the same level. There's just different skill levels. So the next problem with coaching is emotional development. So I'm sure we all know the basic social, emotional benefits that come from sports, but we forget that the bulk of these benefits are determined by the experience that the athlete has with the coach. So the coach is responsible for making sure that the emotional development takes place within their athletes. There's a book called Coaching Social and Emotional Skills in Youth Sports, and they state that there are three aspects of development that lay the foundation for the rest. So these are kind of the three aspects that they talk about. The first one is youth-adult relationships, positive and sustained relationships with adults. This has a lot to do with positive attachment to an adult that can ultimately be a role model for the athlete. And this is kind of creating a bond that will benefit them, assuming the coach has a good influence, which I would hope they do. And this is a bond that can keep on growing as well if you continue to play for the coach, each year. And I kind of talked about this earlier a little bit, but like good example, like when I played baseball little league, I played for like 6-7 years maybe, and 4 of those were with the same coach. I played for him for 4 consecutive years, and like what I experienced through that was I was able to grow a bond with that coach every year, and by the 4th year, like his family was friends with my family. I was friends with his son. We went over to each other's house for like cookouts and birthday parties and stuff, and that's just not something you're going to get with or you're not likely to get with a coach that you're with for 1 year, so it makes a difference. Skill development, the practice of social, emotional, and cognitive skills in a supportive culture and climate. When talking about skill development, we always want to talk about the physical skills of the sports that the kids are gaining, but we don't always talk about the social and the cognitive benefits that come from it very often. This is a time for kids to interact with other kids in a setting other than the classroom or at home. And the coach needs to put their athletes in a position to thrive socially and build those skills. So, like, you're in charge as a coach, you're in charge of putting them in the position to be social, to get out of their comfort zone, to, put all these skills into practice outside of a classroom. So the third one, opportunities for leadership, opportunities to use life skills as leaders in valued activities. Sports are one of the best ways for athletes to showcase these leadership abilities. Some kids are, they want to be leaders just because they want to be, and then a lot of kids, this just comes really naturally for them. And coaches have the opportunity to place these kids with the leadership qualities in leadership roles on the team. This will help them grow as a leader and benefit them in all aspects of life because, they'll have the confidence to do it now. And that'll help them later on in life with so many different things just besides sports. Next, this is a graphic I got from the YMCA, and it just kind of tells us like what they emphasize in their coaches and they want to see from them. The first one is emotion management. This is supporting youth to constructively handle both positive and challenging emotions. The next is responsibility. Youth learn to be reliable, committed, and fulfill obligations and challenging roles. Personnel development. Act, persist, and initiate goals and outcomes and persevere through difficult situations and challenges. Relationship building. Youth plan, collaborate, and coordinate action with others. Empathy, learn to relate to others with acceptance, understanding, and sensitivity. So just to highlight some of these, personal development I think is a huge one because this is so practical to real life. Like these lessons that they're learning to persevere through difficult situations, like that's every day, So growing up, that's just a skill that they need to be able to learn. So why not learn it through youth sports? Relationship building. I know for you athletes, like you can probably say that a lot of your relationships, like some of your best relationships are from sports, whether it be growing up or in college. And so just to be a coach and to be able to put them in the position to have the same kind of relationships that you've achieved is something that should be highlighted. So next I have another video. This is a video of Kobe Bryant talking about him coaching his daughter. And I don't know if you know who Kobe Bryant is. He actually recently passed away. Huge tragedy in America and really all over the world for that matter. But if you don't know him, he was an NBA basketball player. He played for the LA Lakers his entire life. And he's arguably one of the best basketball players of all time. But more importantly than all that, he was just a huge influence to the game and to kids. And so I thought with his passing, being really relevant, this would be good for him to talk about it. So the next problem is changing the culture. Um, Most of this presentation was primarily focused on, fixing all the problems that the coaches are creating themselves. But part of the problem is actually the environment that we are creating for these coaches and athletes. And when I say we, I mean parents, fans, society, social media, all these people that are creating an environment for the coaches to coach in. Um, so making sure that the focus of the industry on kids and not adults. Making sure that everything we do for youth sports is about the kids, not the adults. It shouldn't ever be about the adults. Um, Making sure every kid at every age or skill level has the greatest chance of achieving success. Um, However, success is defined for that player, so success looks different for every player because every kid is different. And our culture has to stop defining success as one thing. Like when people say if you were the best on the team, you were successful. If you won the championship, you were successful. This has got to get cut out because we need to recognize that there are other things for the athletes to gain, and there are other ways to be successful. So next, encouraging the youth sports industry to support kids' developmental and psychological needs. This means basically that emphasizing that coaching is 20% about building skills and 80% about building character. It's going to be the responsibility of the coach to recognize this and not conform to a culture that says the opposite. The last one, bring integrity, maturity, and humanity to the parent sidelines of our youth sports games. This has a lot to do with like those sideline parents, the typical ones that you hear about or even see if you're at a game. How they interact with the athletes and the coaches during the games and practices. What the parents say and do is going to potentially influence the coach, and then ultimately it's going to affect the athletes. So, it just comes full circle. So next, I have a case study for you guys. It's hopefully posted on Blackboard. And also I got a quiz, so make sure you do the quiz and don't miss out on some points. I would hate that for you. So the case study, you are the director for a new youth soccer league for the local community. This league is for kids ages 6 to 14. Your job is to come up with the code of ethics and training requirements for the people who have stepped up to be coaches in your league. All of these coaches are volunteer coaches, and most are parents of kids on their teams. In a minimum of 200 words, discuss some of the things that you would recommend to them or maybe even require of them before they begin coaching in your league. So just kind of talk about like what you would recommend to these coaches because they're going to be representing your league and what you're going to recommend to them or maybe even require of them. So just based off of all the problems that I've addressed to you and all the training options, just kind of talk about those things. And it's pretty much, it's your league. So, you kind of talk about what you want to talk about. In conclusion, every young athlete deserves to have an awesome coaching experience to, fully enjoy youth sports. I'm thankful and blessed that I had the opportunity to have that. It makes me really sad to think that others did not have that luxury. And so that kind of, affects the way I give this presentation because, heavy heart on me. But everyone, thank you. Stay safe. I want to thank everyone for, watching my presentation. And I hope y'all have a safe rest of the semester. I'll see you.